2021, 2022. That's too many 20s, but of our programs. And tonight we have Margery Winters from Roaring Brook Nature Center, who's going to talk to us about what makes fall fall. So you want to share your screen, Margery?
Sure.
Get going.
All right, thank you. All right. So I don't know if you've all been noticing, but it's beginning to look a lot like fall. Not quite as much as this. Let me go back one slide. So just to say I'm from Roaring Brook Nature Center, which is up in northwest of Hartford in Canton, Connecticut. And we're all looking forward to the wonderful colors of fall. We've been told this year that it's going to be good fall colors. Last year, the drought that we had didn't make for extraordinary colors. But I've been noticing the trees are looking a little bit stressed because we've had too much rain. So I don't sure how this is going to be this year, but let's cross our fingers and hope. So if we want good fall colors, we have to start with these green things, these lovely things that all summer long have been making food for the trees. And of course, through that absolutely amazing process called photosynthesis. I teach a lot of children at the Nature Center, and I try to work in photosynthesis into almost every talk we do, because it is such an amazing thing. This is what keeps us all alive. And, you know, from the true miracle that they can just with water, carbon dioxide, and sunlight, they can make their own food and everything they need to grow. Plants are like little chemical factories. Of course, for us, it's good that they give off oxygen, and they also produce a lot of sugars and a lot of things, including some of our medicines. But it's rather a remarkable process. And actually, for plants, the more carbon dioxide we give them, the better they grow. That is their food. And it all takes place inside these leaves and these little chloroplasts in these little green things. So it's absolutely an amazing chemical process. And the energy, of course, is what comes from the sun that drives the whole process. So as you go for a walk in the woods in the summertime, it is this wonderful green experience. And the reason it's green is because that's the only color the trees don't absorb. So we see that green because that's the only color that really is left over. And for all the summer, we've been seeing that. And that is the color that is not absorbed by the chlorophyll. There are really two different kinds of chlorophyll, the chlorophyll A and the B. They have slightly different spectrums. So these are all the colors of the rainbow. And you can see there's just not much absorption going on in this period between the blue and the yellow, and the blue together make green. So they absorb the yellows and the oranges and the reds, and then the blue and the ultraviolets. Those are the colors that really make plants grow. And you know, it always seems very confusing that we see the colors that they are not absorbing. So here with this apple, all of the colors except red are being absorbed. The red are going into our eyes. It always seems counterintuitive, but that's what it is. So what is causing the leaves to turn from this wonderful green through all these wonderful colors of the rainbow to the, well, that's where the pigments come in. And chlorophyll is the dominant pigment. It is made in the leaves all summer as the leaf goes about its business of making food. And as the days get shorter in the fall, as the equinox comes, the equinox comes along, the days are going to get shorter and shorter. And during that period, the trees start to recognize it's getting to be fall, it's going to be getting winter soon. So they cut down on the amount of chlorophyll that they're making in anticipation of these days. So they start making the green, and then other colors become apparent. So these are the colors that are hiding under the green. So the leaf color in the fall is really affected by three things: the leaf pigments that are there or that are made, the length of the night or the shortness of the day, and the weather plays a lot of role in it too. So we'll talk about that, but we'll start off with the colors that are hiding underneath. And those are the carotenoids, the xanthophylls and the carotenes. We'll talk a little bit about them. So the carotenoids are interesting. They absorb a little bit into that green section of the light spectrum, but they trail off in the yellows and the oranges and the reds. So once the chlorophylls disappear, the carotenoids take over. And if you've ever done painting, you know that you can hide yellow, you can mix yellow, you can mix the greens and the yellow with the green, but you can't really, some of the other colors you can't mix with it. So the carotenoids allow these other colors to show through. And so again, these are the two colors the plants are using to grow. They're really pretty colorblind to green light. So here's the xanthophyll. This is a nice yellow color that's hiding under the chlorophyll. And we have a lot of plants that have that color underneath. Here is the leaf. You can see these brown areas. This is the area where there is no pigment remaining. This is just the brown leaf. Here you can see the xanthophylls, and you can see how when the green disappears, you can see the yellow. And you can see that you don't have to wait for fall to see that. There's a process. If you've ever had a plant that's been buried by mulch or under leaves, you can see that it doesn't have the ability to make the chlorophyll, and it looks a bit washed out, a little pale, but there's some yellow in there. That's the same thing if you grow seedlings in the dark, they will be yellow because that xanthophyll will be there. As soon as you expose them to the light, the chlorophyll will start to be made and the leaf will turn green. So you can hide yellow under green pretty easily. And in some parts of the country, that's pretty much the color of fall. You see these glorious yellows and golds out in the aspens of Colorado. You will not be seeing bright reds. This is sort of a xanthophyll delight out here. And we have them in our area too. We have the quaking aspens. These wonderful leaves turn a beautiful yellow in the fall. And some of our bushes as well. The spice bush is a great bush for fall. It has chartreuse, little chartreuse yellow flowers in the spring. It's not as showy as the what I call the garish forsythia, but it is our native spring early flowering bush. But it puts on a spectacular yellow showing in the fall. As does witch hazel. But now you start to pick up a few of those little oranges, the carotenes. And here's our yellow flowering bush. This is the last flowering shrub of the season. This is the witch hazel. And of course, we all should know about this because Connecticut is the witch hazel capital of the world. And it's not just in the leaves of the trees you start getting these colors. You also see them in our local ferns. I love it when the ferns turn on that golden color and bring a note of brightness to the forest floor. And then you've got the carotenoids, but also the flavonoids. These are the pigments that help give the health property to a lot of our foods. And you can see why the carrots are orange, and that color is from the carotene, the pigment. Now the carotenes are in the leaf. They are hiding with the xanthophylls in the leaf, but the reason we see them is because the chlorophylls break down a lot earlier. As soon as the tree decides to stop making the chlorophylls, the carotenes and the xanthophylls are in there, but they don't break down as quickly. So they are much more lasting than the other pigments. And the carotenes, the oranges, are the ones you see in the sugar maples, and you see them in the sassafras. I love the sort of the bronzy colors and the yellows and the oranges. These are the carotenes and the carotenoids, and the xanthophylls are in there. And then you can get the serviceberry. You can see various shades. And now you start getting into the red. That's a different situation there, but lovely things. Serviceberry is a great tree to have around your house because the leaves drop relatively early, and they really don't require any clean edible at all because they're so small. So they don't really, but here, this is the cause for the red. It's the anthocyanin pigment. And anthocyanins are present in not as many trees around the world, but they're really present in a lot of the tree species in New England. But to make them, this is not a color that hides under green. If any of you paint, you know that if you mix red and green together, you're going to get a brown color. So if you had the anthocyanins in with the green, the chlorophyll, our leaves would be a most unattractive sort of brown all year round. The anthocyanins are actually made after green disappears. And the anthocyanin in the leaves are made with the remaining sugars that are left in the leaf. And there's a lot of debate as to why that might be. Anthocyanin is, you can see here in the last remaining sugars are making the anthocyanins, some of them quite dark, and here the disappearance of the as the last bits of food are taken down into the veins, into the stem, down into the trunk of the tree and into the roots. So the anthocyanins, there was a lot of debate by scientists as to why the tree would go to all this trouble at the very end of the year, just before they're about to lose their leaves for the fall. Why would they go to all the extra effort of making anthocyanin? Why would they make this red pigment? Well, I've read many different explanations, some of which seem much, well, I think are more convincing than the others. One of them that I read was that this was acts as a sunscreen. But that doesn't make any sense because it doesn't really matter to the tree that it's going to be losing these leaves. So why would it be going to this trouble of protecting these leaves? I don't think there's much weight to that theory. But another theory is that the trees are actually make the anthocyanin as a warning signal, a health signal. And it's really the healthy trees, when the trees are in good shape, they make this red anthocyanin. And it's a warning signal to the insects that are migrating at this time of the year, especially the aphids. This is a warning signal to the other tree. It's an honest signal, they call it, to say that I'm healthy, leave me alone. Those trees can fight back chemically. A lot of their insect pests. So they're telling them, don't lay your eggs here. I am going to be toxic. You won't like it. So red is a warning signal to these insects. Don't lay your eggs on me. And in order to make those anthocyanins, you need warm sunny days and cool nights. No frost. Frost is actually a signal that shuts down the tree and they make any more of the colors. So if you have warm sunny days, like it seems like we will have for the next few days, and cool nights, which we had a cool night last night, but you just want to be above frost in order to get those anthocyanins developing and to get the best fall colors. And some of our trees and shrubs make beautiful colors. This is staghorn sumac. A lot of people have, well, they think of it as a weed. I think the most spectacular of our fall colors. It almost looks like little flames. This is an interesting plant. It looks almost tropical. You almost expect, if you painted, you'd know about Henri Rousseau, and he was always having little tropical animals peeking out from underneath the tropical vegetation. This staghorn sumac would fit into those pictures really well. It's a beautiful plant. I know my sister lives in England, and people down the street from her have a staghorn sumac as an ornamental specimen in their front yard. So it's appreciated in other parts of the world, and I think we should appreciate it more. It's a beautiful, beautiful plant, especially in the fall. Another one is Highbush Blueberry. If it's in the sun, it turns a magnificent shade of scarlet. I think equal to the ubiquitous burning bush, which is an invasive species. This one also provides berries for birds, but provides a beautiful fall color. Then there are the red maples. These are the ones you see fall coming first in the maple swamps. You can see the first hints of what's coming for fall. They turn early and a beautiful, beautiful color. And another tree that probably should be planted in our gardens, black gum or tupelo, turns a spectacular shade of red. This is a tree we should be using more in our landscape. And one you probably have in your landscape is a Virginia creeper. It makes a beautiful red leaf in the fall. Here's a spectacular display with the berries. And this is a favorite of birds. This is one of the reasons why you have it in your yard, is because the birds eat the berries and then carry them away and then drop them in a nice fertilized package in your yard with the seeds. But a spectacular vine for an arbor or a trellis. In some areas you could have it on your house, but I love the way in the fall it grows up the tree trunks and wraps around. It almost looks like a little flame going up the tree, and this often happens long before the other trees are starting to turn. This is a great vine that does not pull down the trees like Oriental bittersweet. It's not irritating like poison ivy, which also turns a beautiful color, but I hesitate to put that in because so many people have such strong aversions to it. But here again are the berries. Here's a lovely, food source for our songbirds. And I love the way the plants always make the berries stand out if they want the birds to eat it. Birds can see the berries in ultraviolet, so this plant is trying its very best to try to get the songbirds to eat it and disseminate its seeds. It's also the the Virginia creeper leaves are the preferred food for this caterpillar. I forget the name of it, but it's absolutely magnificent. It gets to be about the size of your thumb and turns into a spectacular moth. And then sourwood. Here's a slow-growing tree. Now you're starting to get into the reds and starting to get into almost the purples as well. But a stunning tree in the landscape. These reds really make fall pop. And the dogwoods turn a beautiful color, almost a bronzy color in the fall. And this is more of our local dogwoods, our native dogwoods, than the Coosa dogwood. And one of my favorites, this is a little bit more southern tree, is the sweet gum. The sweet gum is sort of like a little kaleidoscope of all the different colored leaves. You have the yellows, the oranges, the reds, and then you get this lovely deep bronzy color. So and they can all be on one branch. So it's always interesting why one leaf would go one color and not the other. And here's a spectacular display of the different colors, the greens, the anthocyanins, the xanthophylls, and the carotenes. But it's not just our deciduous trees that turn color. Some of our evergreen trees, like the cedar, will also turn color. And again, the scientists aren't quite sure why, but it's a nice change in the landscape when these, in your home landscape when these do change. But they do know why the red is used in the spring. If you notice, this is a poison ivy leaf over here, and you'll notice when they first come out in the spring, they haven't built up they haven't manufactured their chemical irritants that can cause us to break out in rashes. So to prevent them being eaten or having eggs laid on them by the insects, they do put out the anthocyanins, which make them less palatable. So a lot of times you'll notice that young leaves, and here's another young leaf, and you can see it's got the anthocyanin all along the edge to protect it. But some leaves don't do anything. They just sort of, as the green fades, the yellow fades, and then it turns brown. There's really not much going on. So things like the elms just really don't have that fall color. So some trees are very showy, others not so much. And some of them we tend to think of as not being as showy, the oaks and the beeches. The beeches don't really great show of color, but they also don't let go of their leaves very much. They hold on to their leaves. And as the season progresses, these leaves get bleached out by the sun. And by the end of the season, by the end of winter, their leaves are almost a pale parchment color. I love the way they rattle on the trees in the wintertime. And a lot of the oak trees will also hold on to their leaves, which gives a very interesting look in our winter landscape. But some of the oaks can be very colorful. One of the reasons why some of the oaks are not is, all of the oaks have high levels of tannins, and tannin is a brown pigment in the leaves. So after they lose the green, they're often brown, and they'll stay brown for a long time. They don't disintegrate very quickly on the forest floor because of those high tannin levels protect them from being decomposed rather quickly, unlike some of the other leaves. But the oak trees can turn magnificent colors. Some of them sort of have the bronze look, and some like the red oaks can be spectacularly red. And they do provide great color to the landscape. Here's a view from Talcott Mountain in Simsbury, looking over the Farmington River Valley. And a lot of the trees that you'll see on the hillside are the oaks. And in the morning and evening lights, they just glow. And this is not too many maples in there. Those are mostly oaks. So they have a beauty of their own. And then after the trees have gone to all this trouble of turning these wonderful colors, then the fall process starts. They start to detach from the tree and fall to the ground. And it's wonderful being out there when these are swirling around you, this lovely sort of like a little ticker tape parade. And that happens at the base of the leaf. There's something called the abscission layer. And what's going to happen is that is going to form a little layer there. It's going to weaken. The leaf will fall off and leave behind this little leaf scar. In the wintertime, this is one of the ways that you can identify which tree is which by looking at these leaf scars. And then, of course, here are the buds for the next year. So what happens when the abscission layer is forming? There's a little corky layer, part of the underneath the bark, that forms right at the base of the leaf stem. And what the tree is doing is it is forming a protective layer to keep the water inside the tree and to cut off the water to the leaf. And once that water is cut off, then the chlorophyll starts to wind down. So this little corky layer, and here's a close-up, you can see right under the bark, there's that little corky layer. And this is going to protect the tree from viruses and all sorts of things. And this is where the separation is going to occur. And you can see the little tubes that were connected to the tree have been severed. And that's the end of that leaf. And if you've ever wondered why we call it fall, well, it is because it is the falling of the leaves or of the year. It used to be that the end of autumn was sort of the air. And it's been used for many years. It's an old English word. And then it shortened from the fall of the year or the fall of the leaf to just fall. And this was the term that's been used mostly in the United States. But the English in about, around the 18th century, the 1700s, autumn became the preferred use. And it came from the French autumn and Latin autumnus. And fall was considered very old-fashioned, and autumn was much, much more in vogue. But lately, fall has even been gaining popularity in England again, too. So this is what it's all about. Trees know what's coming. They know they want to get rid of their leaves. They are, as winter comes, the ground freezes, they can't get any water, so they don't want to dehydrate, but they also know that something else is coming. They know that the snow is coming. Now, those leaves provide a tremendous surface area. So if they can get rid of those leaves, they can also cut down on the weight on their branches. Snow, as we all know who have shoveled snow, is very heavy. And they can take a little bit of snow, but they can't take a whole lot. And those of you who are still traumatized by the 2011 snowstorm, I know Simsbury, where I live, we were practically at ground zero, and the FEMA trucks came and went, taking away the fallen trees for months. And it was a lot of the oaks that held on to their leaves that were really heavily hit. Some of the other trees, you can see these trees aren't doing so badly, but this one, because it's got those extra leaves, they were, this is what caused a lot of the damage in our town. Other trees have a different strategy. The green trees have designed their leaves to be thin and a darker green, needles coated in wax so that they don't lose that water. They can keep it throughout the year. And it also means that they don't dehydrate during the winter time, and their branches tend to be a lot more flexible than the deciduous trees. So when the snow load comes, it does weigh down their leaves, but then their dark green needles underneath actually absorb the sun. Even the sun can get through the snow. It will warm up those leaves enough to shed the snow, to melt, make a little sort of melted layer, and then the snow will fall off, and back come their branches. However, not all trees are as lucky. Our white pine trees have a terrible time in the snow. Our white pine ones you can identify, they've got the 3 needles, 5 needles per cluster rather. And if they get hit by snow, often they will be severely damaged. However, they do something to try to modify their damage. What they will do is they will lose about 1/3 of their needles. 1/3, so they're a semi-deciduous tree. They will lose 1/3 of their needles, and how lucky for us, because in the fall, when they are losing those needles, this is the perfect time to go rake them off the grass and use them as a garden mulch. It's one of the best mulches that you can use in your garden. Even though their pine trees are considered acidic, it doesn't matter. The acidity breaks is very short-lived. And anytime you add carbon to your soil, you're going to neutralize the pH. So it will buffer your soil. We all have acidic soils in Connecticut, almost all of us, but these are a wonderful resource for your garden. I have been known to go to other people's yards when they bag up those leaves. I feel around, they have this is pine needles. They got a lot of pine trees, white pine trees in their yard, and I will bring them home and use them for mulch in my garden. They don't last very long. And actually down in South Carolina and further south, they will go into the woods and scrape up the pine needles and sell them as mulch. I don't think that's a particularly good idea for the forest down there. But we have white pine trees, and if you have white pine trees, you have an excellent source of mulch. You don't have to go and buy it. And then we have other trees, larch and tamarack, or also tamarack. These are a deciduous conifer. They have these wonderful little cones that look like little rosettes, and they have delightful little clusters of needles. So it's a needled tree, but in the fall, they turn this spectacular golden color. The first time I saw them was driving up to Ottawa, and I thought, oh dear, those trees are sick, because obviously they were conifers. But no, that's what they're supposed to do. They are getting ready for winter, and they are turning gold, and they can be spectacular. So if you want color in your yard, plant a tamarack, and it is delightful. You get the needles, great mulch, and get those cute little pine cones. And there they are, spectacular. So it's not just the deciduous trees that provide color in the fall. And it's not just the trees that provide color in the fall. There are many bushes and shrubs that provide color in their stems. This is one of the more extreme selections, the red osier dogwood. But a lot of our dogwoods have a beautiful sort of reddish, purplish color in their stems. In order to maintain these reddish stems, however, you do have to trim them every, 1/3 of them every year. So this is the new growth that gives the color. But how gorgeous in the fall, even after the trees have lost their color, we still have color in the shape of the branch, in the branches. The fall is such a magnificent time of year for other colors that come in the form of berries and fruits. As the summer comes, you get the red of spicebush berries. Oftentimes these will be there before the leaves drop off, and you don't really get to see them very much because the birds will just come and devour them. This is a very favorite food of the birds. But if you have a crab apple in your yard, after the leaves drop off, you get the spectacular color of all these red berries. And of course, then you get the birds coming in to feast on them. And the best red berries of all, the ones that last well into winter, are the winter berries. And you can see this bird's thoroughly enjoying them. I like to say that this is not the bird's favorite food. I don't know. I mean, I like Brussels sprouts, but it might be considered like the Brussels sprouts of the bird world. It's just not their favorite. But if there's nothing else to eat, they will eat them. And they probably taste a whole lot better after they've been through several frosts. Several foods do taste better after they've been frozen. So this is one that, if there's nothing else, it will, and it's a wonderful last thing in the pantry for the early robins and some of the other birds that are, if we get a late spring storm. But again, there's that wonderful sumac, eating the staghorn, the berries. This is a great food for a lot of birds that switch over their diet in the wintertime to fruits, more, when the insect population dwindles. So another reason to plant those sumac. So it means to have a stand of sumac in your backyard. You get the fall color. And actually the flowers that that were there before the berries are a great pollinator plant. So you don't have to just have the flowers. And the berries of the evergreens, we don't tend to think of them as fall colors, but you do get that lovely glaucous blue. And I love the way that the yellow-rumped warblers will absolutely strip a bayberry bush of those lovely little berries as they're migrating through in the fall. And the wonderful thing about our our native plants is they co-evolve with the birds so that they they produce a seed fruit at just the right time to accommodate some of the birds in their life cycles. And of course, the birds accommodate the plants by spreading the seeds around. It's not just the birds. This is the time of the year when lots of animals are fattening up on the produce that is available. Here you have a lovely, lovely picture of the gray squirrel gathering up the hickory nuts. And this is the time of year when there are lots of nuts available. So not just the hickory nuts, but you also have the beech nuts and the walnuts and the black color. And this is the inner shell of the black walnut. So you have lots of those. Of course, the main mast crop for Connecticut is the acorns, and especially the white acorn. That is the preferred one. The white acorns are the ones that sprout immediately as they hit the ground. They send out the radicle, start to grow. This is the little lunch package that the mother tree gave to the seedling or the seed, so that it could get a start in the forest floor when it, underneath an oak tree. It's pretty. The light is pretty dim. But of course, they're counting on creatures to come and bury these. But some years you have just a super abundance of acorns, and it's sort of a boom or bust for the acorns. Sometimes you have a few, but a lot of years you have just this wonderful abundance, and you go walking the woods and you can't help but step on these acorns. And there's more food than you could possibly use. So what the trees are hoping is that the squirrels will come along and find those acorns and bury them. And the interesting thing is that they will bury thousands and thousands of acorns. And there's a researcher in Connecticut who has found that the squirrels actually remember where they buried their acorns. One of the things I like to ask the school children is right after Halloween, if they have if any candy left over, that if it's wrapped, I suggest that they go and bury their candy in the backyard and then dig it up in March and see how many of them they'd remember where they are. The squirrels do a much better job than we do. That's what they're really good at. They're really good at finding acorns. And imagine the toughness of the job. They have to go and bury, find them under the snow. Well, what a task. And so, we used to think it was just, based on their smell, but they actually remember. And I always feel so sorry for the squirrels when that snow turns that crusty, it has that crusty thing. They have to get through it and to get into the softer snow to find it. So if you have squirrels at your bird feeder, I hope you will be kind to them this year. They are the ones that plant the acorns in the woods. And actually, they don't know that the bird feeder is also a squirrel feeder. So give them a break. They have a tough life. So the question is, who eats the most acorns? Well, squirrels certainly eat acorns, but who else do you think eats acorns? Well, we have several culprits. This is a very important crop. Douglas Tallamay, I hope you're all familiar with his work. He's just written a new book, The Nature of Oaks, and he talks about oaks being a keystone species. This is a species that gets the animals through the winter. Bears will fatten up on the acorns, as will deer, as will turkey. And here, I love this picture with the blue jay with these acorns. They can get, I think, 5 of them into, and then we'll fly off and stash them. But this is a very important mast crop that's high in fat and that animals get through the winter. But there's another animal who is actually eats even more acorns than any of these creatures, and it's this one. This is the acorn weevil. And what she does is she lays her eggs in the forming acorn, and as it develops, it turns into it hatches into this little acorn weevil. So if you've ever picked up an acorn, it's all mushy on the inside. That's who's been eating it. It's this acorn weevil. And eventually it will chew its way out, and then as a larva, and then it will turn back into change into the adult form. So there's the one. So there are lots of creatures out there who want to eat the acorns, but it's actually the oak trees who decide how many of these creatures live in the woods, because after they've had a stupendous mast crop, the trees are exhausted, and the next year they communicate with each other And all, and it's sort of a collective thing. And the next year they might have lots of oak leaves on the ground, but you might not see many acorns. So because there aren't many acorns, then the deer, the turkey, the bear, squirrel pop and the acorn weevil populations tend to crash. So yeah, the scientists are finding that it's not just the weather that determines that the trees are actually communicating with each other through the mycorrhiza of the fungi network under the ground to say, well, this is the year. They don't do it as individuals. They don't make acorns. They make them as a group so that they can control the populations of the predators in the the ones that are going to be eating their nuts. They want those squirrels to be able to bury them. They don't want many of those to survive. They want their acorns to survive and turn into trees. So this is what we're hoping for. And I always love it when there aren't too many green trees in there to sort of muddy up the colors. And you know, when you have the bare trees, you can really start to see the colors pop. And this is what we're waiting for. So what exactly do we need to get this? Well, there's a recipe for fall colors. We need a warm, wet spring. We want a warm but dry summer. This is what the sign, early fall rains and sunny fall days. That's always very important for making colors. And cool fall nights, no freezing. We talked about that. So I find it hard to figure out, remember our weather. I always think we suffer from weather amnesia. So we'll try to think about what we've had this year while we go through some of the other parameters. The reason why we have spectacular colors and some other parts of the world don't is because of the nature of our tree species. In North America, we have 800 species of trees, and we have 70 oak species. But if you look at Western Europe, they have 51 tree species and 3 oaks. And that really is a result of our past history with our glaciation. In North America, we have north and south mountain ranges. So when the glaciers came, the trees were able to retreat in front of the glaciers. And then when the glaciers receded, the trees were able to come back. In Western Europe, they have mountain ranges. And as the mountains came down, the trees had nowhere to go and those species died out. So some of the trees remained, but they have such a paucity of tree species. And a lot of these trees just don't have the ability to produce some of the pigments that ours do. So if you were to go to England for the fall, although there are lovely colors, they're all mostly on the bronzy yellow gold colors. They don't have as many of the trees that can produce the anthocyanins. And then it depends where your tree, the colors you get depends on which species of tree you have. So some trees as I said, produce more colors than others. And some tree species, depending on their phenotype, is this a tree from the north is going to turn, if you bought a tree from a northern nursery and planted it in your yard, it's going to turn color sooner than a southern variety of the same tree will. So there's difference within a tree species as well as difference between the tree species. So if this were the same tree as that, this one must be a northern one, and this would be a more of a southern species. So there are also different reasons why individual trees, and sometimes you'll see one branch that turns color. So here you see one branch has turned color, and that might be because there might be a girdling group down below that you can't see, and that stressed that tree. Or sometimes it's because of the angle of the sun. So here on this side of the tree is getting more sun than this tree. You see the shadows going in that direction. So this one's getting more sun, and that sunlight is able to affect the way that the tree turns color. So sometimes you see these bicolored trees. And then it also depends how much rain or how much sun you have. If it's a very cloudy, gray, wet fall, you'll get the yellows and the oranges, but you won't get the reds. But to make the bright colors, you need the sunny days, the blue sky, the cool nights. So it will vary from year to year, depending on what the weather is for that particular year. So this year I was trying to figure out, I was thinking, well, it was a really late start for spring. It was cool and wet. And then we had a cool, dry early summer, but then it turned hot and then it turned cool again. And it's been a wet late summer. And And it's been wet, but a reasonably sunny start to fall. And who knows when frost is going to come. So I'm not quite sure when, what kind of thing. But again, I think trees are a bit stressed from what I've seen around. The trees, I think, have maybe a fungal disease because they were so thin last year because of the they're just a little under stress, and with all the rain, I think a lot of the trees are starting to turn kind of they're not turning color, they're just not looking happy. So I'm not sure what our fall is going to be. But you know that they are aware of the seasonal changes. You can see what's happening. It starts from the top and works its way down. You see these trees on the mountain have already turned in the anticipation of the coming winter. And here you can see that it's, it starts, I love the way you can start to see it move down a hillside. They know what's coming. So these trees are already ready. These are getting ready for the next, for the cold that is coming. And you can see that thing play out in the foliage peak charts. It starts in the north and works its way to the south, but you can see all up and down the Appalachian mountains, you can see that it is starting to, these are the early ones in late September, so we're not even there yet. But as you move down from elevation and as you move down in latitude, you get the changing of the fall foliage patterns. So, elevation plays a big role in this as well. And then they all fall to the forest floor. And I think when all these colorful leaves fall to the floor, it almost looks like a lovely Persian rug. But pretty soon they turn brown. And then what happens to them? You'll notice that most of the leaves from the year before and the year before that and the year before that have disappeared. And so what happens to them? Well, it's a wonderful process. This is how the trees are feeding themselves. This is the leftover carbon that they took up from the atmosphere. They're getting it down, and it's going to be taken in. So there's going to be a layer of leaves. A good first, you have a nice thick layer of leaves, and then that gets degraded by the tritivores, the little creatures that break down the leaves, turned into humus, and then some of it will get mixed into the mineral soil. So that's ideally what happens, and these are the guys that do it. Soil, and this is a talk for another day, the insects, all these little creatures, the plant roots, the fungi, the microbes, all of these do a wonderful job at recycling all those leaves. As should we. When those leaves fall in your yard, run them over with your lawnmower and scrape them into your garden beds, because that's what that's what nature would suggest, and that would be the best way of getting through it. There's one creature in here I'm not that keen about, this little guy over here. Gardeners seem to love them, but this is what happens in the woods when you have too many earthworms. We have so many invasive species that they're just everywhere, and they eat up the leaves too quickly, and this can really wreck our forest systems. So we want those leaves on the forest floor. That's a sign of a good, healthy ecosystem. This is not. This, when rain hits this, it's just going to flow into the rivers, wash away the soil. It's not good, but that's too depressing. Let's go back to the colorful leaves. This is what we're hoping for. There's nothing lovelier than a beautiful day in the fall when the leaves are at their peak. It's sort of a big finale to the year, the last hurrah, a gorgeous conclusion. And this is what we want to see when we go out into our landscape, see those beautiful colors as a result of the geology and the geography and the biology of these trees. It all comes together in New England, and the climate. So it all comes together in our area, and we are lucky, lucky, lucky to live here, because other people have to come here. They travel from all over the world to do their leaf peeping here, but we are spectacularly lucky to have this in our backyard. This is $1 billion in New England. I heard that Governor Lamont, I think this last week, was trying to start a campaign for the colors in Connecticut, and to encourage tourists in Connecticut to see our colors, and our colors are gorgeous. So leaf peeping is a big industry for New England, and it's over so soon. And eventually the leaves come off the tree, but that's another beauty. I think when the leaves are off the tree, you start seeing the shapes of the trees. You get this tracery, this lovely thing. And I think there's nothing more spectacular as the days get shorter and evenings come on sooner. You get to see these spectacular early winter sunsets through the tracery of the leaves. So it's a spectacular time of the year, even after the leaves fall. You get to see the landscape that we've been looking at that's been clouded by the leaves. You get to see it in a whole different light, knowing that the buds are already there for next year, that these are already prepared. Spring will come again. And even though we're 6 months without leaves, it's fun to see the leaves fall. And it's a time that we should all enjoy. So this is I think, the fun time of the year. So I want to thank you for having me here. Does anyone have any questions?
If you have a question, please unmute yourself and ask it. I have a question.
Yes,
Going way back to the beginning with
yeah,
New England having so much red in their trees as compared to other areas.
yeah.
Why? Why New England?
I don't know. Well, there are other world that have beautiful colors. I mean, Norway has some spectacular colors. The Ozarks have it, not just New England, but we do have the sunny days. So they might have trees that would reflect the red sign. I mean, 70% of the trees in New England have the ability to make the anthocyanin. Some of the others might not need it for warding off the insects. If they might use other tricks. So it might have something to do with the insects. I don't think it has anything to do with the sunscreen. And it's just because we have so many different species of trees. So I think those things play into it. But again, the scientists haven't really figured out why they make the anthocyanin in the first place. So if we can find that out, it might be able to answer that question, is why New England has it. I know in a lot of places where where you have the migrating insects, like down in the tropics, the insects don't need to migrate. It's not going to get cold. They just stay there. So the trees have come up with other techniques for battling them on a consistent basis. But in New England, it could be just because there is this migration. I think that could have something to do with it because of the seasonal cold. But other areas have, Ohio has beautiful colors. Anywhere east of the Mississippi, when you get the variety of trees, you can get some beautiful colors. But I know around the Ohio area, sometimes around the Great Lakes, they have beautiful colors, but it often is cloudy. So that, it's very cloudy around the Cleveland area. The colors don't show up as much.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Dennis.
Anybody else?
Okay. Anything else? All right. Well, thank you very much for having me here tonight. And go out and look at those fall leaves and see if you can figure out whether we're going to have a good season or not. And take a look at the trees. I know down your way that your trees are looking better than the ones up here. I know we had a very severe drought last year, and it's been a interesting summer. So how are your trees looking? Are they looking a little tired at this point of the year?
They're looking mostly green.
Green. Well, you're luck. Okay, you're gonna have a good fall. All right. Well, thank you very much for having me here tonight.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Margery.
All right. Thank you.